Welcome to the Warband, a World of Warcraft podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Swaglock, and with me today is our wonderful, our incredible, everybody's favorite, Chicken. Chicken, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Pretty good. Pretty good. You know, yeah. It's a great day to be a WoW player, right?
Dude, it is, man. This week has
baby.
been so good with the new patch. Obviously, the content you and I do the most is not available. Mythic Plus rating, not yet available to be played. But even still, things feel really great, dude. How have you enjoyed the patch so far?
Well, let's start it out pretty good. Obviously, I feel like if you're listening to this episode, you should probably just assume that there's going to be a fair amount of spoilers, but I just want to preface it. I mean, we're going to talk pretty exclusively about the new zone, everything new patch, so if you don't want to hear it, come back later, but
yeah,
if you do, please stick around. I don't want to upset anyone that, you know how that stuff goes.
Yep,
Better safe than sorry, right?
Absolutely.
But I think it's been really good. I mean, let's just get right into it, right? I mean,
yeah, dude, what have you been up to? Like, what has interested you the most?
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. For some reason, whenever I start playing like a new patch, I just get sidetracked by like the most stupid things. So like, I'm not gonna lie, the first day I played it on Tuesday when it came out, I got to the actual like city, right? Dude, I can't even remember what it's called.
Undermined?
Yeah, is that what the actual city is called?
The city's called Undermine. Yeah.
Okay. It's kind of sad that I don't even know that. But anyways, I got to the actual city and I just started doing world quests. Like I just did all the world quests, and I was like, that's literally how I spent like the first day. And then, a couple of days later, I'm still working on the campaign. And then, I still don't think I understand what this shipping stuff is for D.R.I.V.E, but yeah, I mean, that stuff is still kind of confusing to me. So I think I might need to spend some time and kind of understand that a little bit more. But I ran some of the new delves. I haven't ran the new dungeon yet, which I think you had mentioned that it's not on heroic yet.
No, it's only on
as
normal.
of the time of recording this. It's still just normal. Yeah. So I don't know. Is it like worth running it in normal? I mean, maybe you just see the aesthetic of the dungeon and kind of get the feel of it. But like, obviously, there's going to be more mechanics and boss things during Mythic and even heroic, right? So I don't even know if it's worth doing that. So I'll probably just save that for next week, to be honest. But the delves seem kind of cool. I think it's Site 9. Kind of has some cool like slimy Arkar vibe, with like,
dude. It was the black blood thing. Yeah,
like slimes and stuff like that. That one was pretty cool. Oh my goodness, I'm blanking on the other one names right now.
The zone names I don't quite, I'm gonna be honest, I don't quite have those memorized. I'm still working.
For the delves.
Oh, the delves. Oh, dude, I thought you were talking about the zones.
Like the different zones within Undermine.
Something sleuth, right?
Yeah. To be honest, naming is really weird for me. I couldn't even tell you what half the delves are in what is it, Khazalgar. I don't think I could tell you the name of any single delve in Khazalgar other than the
Side Street Sleuth. Sleuth
okay.
is the name of it. Yeah, dude. I don't touch delves, bro.
Now I just go to like the same like 3 delves. Even before this, I went to like the same 3 delves.
Whatever's
and
closest
just did
to
those.
Dornagal, man. That's what I do.
Yeah, right. But those feel pretty good. I'm kind of interested to see what they'll go into. I mean, there's a couple more interviews that have come out since then about season 2, so we'll definitely talk about that. The drive mechanic. Okay, here's the thing.
I think the reason why you're about to say
ahead.
you dislike it is the reason why I like it.
I don't think I dislike it.
Okay.
I don't think I like it though. I think I'm like on the fence about it. Like,
yeah,
I think it's gonna. I don't think I'll be able to say that I like it or dislike it until like probably midway through the patch. Like midway through season 2, I'll give like, okay, yeah, I kind of like it, or I'll be like, I'm just not a fan of it. But
yeah,
there's just a few things about it that I do like and a few things I don't like. Obviously, the speed of it's pretty cool. You know, obviously, if you're not aware, it's, you know, Undermined is definitely just a ground based zone. You know, no flying as of right now. So getting around faster with the drive mechanic is obviously a lot better than, you know, your typical ground mounts. But to me, the controls just aren't there yet. I'm used to just like double clicking on the mouse and just flying around and just moving, you know, my cursor to where I want to go.
Do you still have your A and D keys unbound, your left, right turn?
Yeah, I don't.
That probably makes it hard for driving.
Yeah, it does make it super hard where, you know,
because I use those for drift, right? So like A and D are what I use to drift, right? So I'll hit A space, D space, and that way I'll drift left or right. I usually still double click my mouse for main movement, but I'll still use the A and D for the drifting to ensure I'm drifting the way I want to drift.
Yeah. Wait, so you don't just press space to drift?
No.
Oh.
Because it,
okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Well, for some reason, when I press A and D too, that seems to work as well.
Okay.
I mean, my A and D is strafe, right, instead of turn.
It's possible they made the strafe work as well. I actually have no clue. I haven't tried it with those.
It seems to work for me, but I'm just so used to just when I'm on a mount, I just double click on the mouse and just go, right?
Yeah.
So it's taken a lot of getting used to.
The drift is definitely
A and D.
The drift, I think, is a mechanic that's you can get used to. I think for me, what I like about it is actually I kind of like. At first, I didn't know. Like when I first did it, I was like, "Oh, this feels almost a little clunky." Turning is hard. I was constantly running into things. I'm still constantly running into things. It feels like I'm moving
all the time.
I like that we can move fast because again, we're just used to moving fast. Is that a good thing that we move fast? Probably not. It's probably not good for the longevity of the game. But it's always fun. I always enjoy moving fast. Dragon riding is a more fun flying experience. So can we have a more fun ground mount experience? And so when I got into it, I wanted the dragon riding equivalent of ground mounts. That was my idea. My mental idea was like, this is gonna be the dragon riding equivalent of ground mounts. And I've had to come to realize that that's not what it is. It's not that. Because it's clunkier, right? It's wonkier. It's goblin-y. And that was what, like, when that clicked for me, I was like, oh my gosh. It's just, yes, 100%. This is how goblin driving would feel. Like, this is goblin driving, right? Constantly running into things, constantly, like, sliding past areas I'm supposed to go to, constantly going too fast and not being able to stop in time, right? Like, yes, you know what? Actually, this makes me feel like I'm a freaking goblin right now. Like all of a sudden, like, when that clicked for me, I was like, oh, yeah. I don't think this is going to be the replacement for ground mounts. I don't think the game's going to be like... No, I don't think they're gonna be like, you have dynamic. My next
question,
right? Again, think about like dungeons and stuff, right? Slap one of those in a dungeon.
I mean, see, and this was my other thing. That was going to be a question that I asked. Do you think this is going to be the new, let's just call it dynamic ground mount, right? Because I don't think it necessarily. I'm on the fence with it because my problem is with Undermined, it feels like it's such a tight zone. Like everything's so tight, everything's close together. Where and I tried to do this, but you can't. I wish you could do it.
Yeah.
And I hope maybe later in the expansion they let you use it anywhere, right? You can only use it in Undermine right now.
Yep.
But like, just imagine just driving around the Isle of Dorn, and just going around like the hills and just driving around like that. That I think would be really cool because then you can just drift. You can just do like donuts in the middle of the
drive
in the
through
middle
like
of
the barrens or something, like especially like old content where there's like nothing, right? Like just sparse, empty. Yeah, so part of me is like, yeah, those would be cool, but I've come to kind of realize like part of it I think is they like the zaniness of needing to dodge everything as you're driving, right? Like, but also it does, and I believe it's faster than dragon flying. I could be wrong. I think
You think?
I think I remember reading that's faster than skywriting when you're like boosting and stuff. And it's easy enough.
That probably makes sense.
And it's easy enough to get more boost. Like boost is so easy to get, right? And then again, like the question is, right, does that become the norm for outdoor content? But then the moment you're phased into a dungeon, now all of a sudden you're just back on your normal mount, doing normal mounts, right? Like it raises a lot of questions. It also, it's one thing to make flying look fast and exciting and soaring through the sky, but how fast can they make mounts look before it actually looks goofy, right? And I think
that's fair, yeah.
And I think it's very intentionally wonky, right? Like your turns feel very wide. And I'm sure different tires over time will make
they do. Yeah.
Make that feel different, right? And like a little tighter, a little bit driftier, whatever. But yeah, I think the more I play it, the more I'm like, I don't know if this is their plan long term. But also they can't just drop it, right? They can't just be like, we just put all these developer hours into a huge mechanic for one patch of an expansion.
Yeah, right.
Right. So there's gotta be something. Dude, but hear me out. What if they like started taking a bunch of like old content areas and allowed us to Mario Kart race in those areas? Like,
that'd be kind of neat.
Like not just straight driving, but like giving us like possible like weapons we can pick up and stuff, right? Like
that would actually kind of be cool.
And like goblin-y, gnome-y, like they can make a whole thing around goblins and gnomes competing or something.
That'd be
funny,
neat,
dude. It'd be funny. Like, you see an orc roll up with like their little wooden spike wheels or something. Like that could be a cool use of that. But again, it's hard to be like, the nice thing is for outdoor content, even if we don't have that, we still have dragon riding everywhere, or I mean sky riding. We have sky riding everywhere. So, but again though, like it's cool. Part of me is like, I keep running into stuff. I'd rather use it somewhere like Mulgore where I'm not going to run into something.
Yeah.
But then also part of me is like, but that's kind of the charm of it. Kind of the charm of it is like, I think I 100% think that the cards make it feel like I'm in a goblin town more. Like it pulls me into it more than if I was just running around on my normal mount.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, and you mentioned something that I wasn't thinking about when I considered this being something that they bring to the rest of the game was, how do they integrate that with other ground mounts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Imagine you see like a friggin' horse like running that speed and it just looks for lack of a better word, like it just looks stupid, right?
Yeah.
Like you got a horse just like basically like going like the speed of light, and it would just look goofy, right? And how do they do it with maybe like a select few mounts that they can do it? Because I don't even think it's necessarily it's not considered a mount, is it? It's still just considered like a mechanic, right?
Yeah. Yep.
That doesn't sound like a reassuring yep.
No. I'm not really totally sure, to be honest with you.
Okay. I didn't think it was like a collectible mount. Like I thought it was just kind of like,
yeah, it's a spell. That's why. In the game it's code like a spell. Yeah.
That's what I'm asking. Yeah. Like I didn't think it was like a collectible, like, oh hey, you can use this outside of the Undermine, just it won't. And maybe that's what they turn it into. Maybe it'll just be turned into, hey, you can use this outside of Undermine. It's just gonna work like a regular mount, right?
Yeah. Because
they don't ever bring it back.
Well, because it's interesting, because dragon riding was a mount. So when we went to the Dragon Isles, the dragons we got were mounts. They showed up in your mount inventory. They're listed as mounts, but you could not use them outside of the Dragon Isles. You only use them in the Dragon Isles with dragon riding. And then you could use your other flying mounts on the Dragon Isles once you unlocked the ability to normal fly. You can use them as ground mounts regardless. And then once they added the ability for other mounts to fly, they also added the ability for the dragons to be used outside, even in static. I think they all have static flying animations now. I haven't tried it yet because I don't do static flying. If I'm doing static flying, I'm definitely not grabbing a dragon, right? So
yeah, right.
I don't know. I've never tested it. I should, but I haven't. I imagine that there's no reason why they can't. But the cards are different because they're not in the mount inventory. If you take your car off your bar, literally the game actually, because I did this by accident, I thought it was a different mount that I was removing from my bar. The game will actually just put that icon back on the middle of your screen to like force you to drag it back to your bar. It becomes an extra action button automatically. So it really is not a mount, because if I took it off my bar and it didn't give me that extra action button automatically, then there would be nowhere for me to find them out. It would literally just be gone. It doesn't show up in any like collection inventory.
Yeah, no. That's kind of, now that you're saying that out loud, yeah, I definitely remember that happening, because I did the same thing. I just like drug it off. Actually, I think it was when I switched from Unholy to Blood to do some of the delves. It just appeared back on my screen because it switched hotbars. So yeah, I mean, I personally think they should bring it, and I mean, to your greater point of like, why would they invest all this time into making this mechanic and then not adding it to? I mean, you know, I'm sure they spent like hours of development time to add this into the game, and then for them to just only keep it around for like a little portion of it, just I just can't. That just can't be right, right?
No, yeah. So that's the question. Like, how do they repurpose this content? And I'm not sure, right? Like, I don't think, and I don't even know if I want the answer to be to have these outside. I just don't know, right? Like, part of me's like, oh, that'd be fun. Part of me's like, oh, but what can of worms does that open up, right? I don't know, right? Because part of me's like, oh, well, what if they just give me that mount, and that's the only thing that can do that, right? Okay, well then, outside of dungeons, would I ever use my other mounts ever again? Right? Probably not. Okay, well, you know, if it has wheels, then maybe they could make that work. So part of me is like,
that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
But part of me is like, but then like any like animal mount or whatever, like just something becomes pointless outside of dungeons. So it is such a. But then I wonder, like, do they make, again, that Mario Kart question? Do they make content that utilizes that resource now that it exists? Right now that it exists. Now it'll take a little extra work for them to make that, but again, I think probably worthwhile. Like, probably worthwhile. And it'd be cool. Like, dude, you know how dope it'd be for us to be in like guild chat? Like, yo, anybody want to go do like a race? And you just get like 5 friends together because you're just goofing, right? It doesn't have to have a reward of any kind. Just like, hey, dude, if you join with like a full party group, that you guys can compete in a race, and like you can collect turtle shells and throw them at each other. Well, and this would probably be like rockets and things, right? Like, think like Goblin and Gnome tech. Honestly, it could get crazy, right? It doesn't have to be Goblin Gnome, dude. You could also just incorporate magic stuff in general, dude. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, to your point earlier, though, like, I don't even think it would be that game changing, because, I mean, to the fact that just like any time that you would use it, it's clear that, hey, I can also just like sky ride. So like, why does it matter if I have access to this, right? Like, I mean, 99% of the time I'm mounting up is to fly. Like, I mean, rare cases outside of dungeons, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you mount up to, you know, just walk through like a town, or like a, you know, I'm thinking of the Siren Isles before they had flying. Like, obviously you had to just ground mount, but I mean, modern day WoW, I feel like, just doesn't have a lot of modern day WoW.
Yeah, I do think it feels too. Again, I think it feels too clunky.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, it definitely
that it would feel like
does,
a really, to us, it'd be like, how fast. But to a new player, they'd be like, oh, this game feels undeveloped, right?
Yeah.
But again, I think part of it's because it's supposed to be goblin-y. It's supposed to feel kind of clunky. It's supposed to feel a little
it's supposed
zany,
to feel like,
right? Like
almost wrong, right?
Yeah, like almost silly, right? Like it feels almost
silly. Yeah.
And that's why I keep. And plus, again, how am I gonna like, dude? What am I gonna do? Drift my horse? Right?
Yeah,
like,
right. Yeah, exactly.
Right. They're not adding this to other mounts, right? Like, oh, dude, let me just go drift my dragon while I'm running along the ground, you know? Like, and so, you know, the question comes back. I'm picturing animals drifting, right? Like, dude, let me go drift my Mogyak.
Gosh.
The Mogyak.
Oh my gosh,
dude, right? Dude,
Brutosaurus.
Dude, imagine boosting with the Bruto, right? Bruto boost.
Yeah, dude.
And so, yeah, right. So that's where the question comes. So that's why I keep going back to like, dude, I feel like I feel like it wouldn't work unless they only made it mechanical mounts that could do that. But then now all of a sudden you're making one type of mount just significantly better for outdoor use.
And everyone would use it.
Yep. And so, yeah, I don't know. I feel like, and again, though, personally, I would love to just take one of those cards somewhere, like, especially old content where there's not as much stuff, and just zoom, dude. Just race from, like, I don't know, Booty Bay all the way up to, like, Plaguelands, right? Eastern Plaguelands.
Yeah.
Eastern Plaguelands is at the very north of Eastern Kingdoms. I don't know how well you know that map. I'm just clarifying. I'm just messing with you.
I don't. And we'll definitely talk about more stuff that I probably don't really care about. But I mean, what outside of Drive? I mean, what's your general feel of the zone and the design? Like, you know, I mean, just first glance. I mean, we spent a fair amount of time in the zone. Just like the aesthetic of it, you know, how it feels. Like, what's your first thoughts?
Ooh, yeah, dude. I love it. I love it so much, man. Sometimes we get new zones. Okay, I'm gonna be honest. I usually don't care that much for mid expansion zones. Mid expansion zones,
like 0.1 patches, 0.2 patches.
Yeah, right. So, oh gosh, the Wailing Caverns, was that what was called?
Zarelek Caverns.
Oh, Wailing Caverns was an old classic dungeon. Zarelek Caverns, right? We get to Zarelek Caverns in Dragonflight. I didn't care for that. Yeah. We got Korthia in Shadowlands. I didn't care for Korthia. We got the Sepulchre Zone, whatever it was called, in Shadowlands as well. Didn't care for that.
Zereth Mortis,
yeah. I like the Emerald Dream. Emerald Dream was pretty. It wasn't like, it didn't blow me away. Cool. It was just like, oh yeah, there's a lot of plant life. I like the Emerald Dream because it was like a lore thing where I was kind of like, oh dude, we hear about the Emerald Dream. We finally actually get it in the game. I remember playing on like private servers way back in the day when I couldn't afford to play WoW. Listen, don't ban me. This was back in like BC. I was a high school, middle school kid with like no money. I pay for the game now. I pay my subscription and I help other people with their subscription. Sometimes Blizzard. I'm making amends. Okay, just want to clarify.
There you go.
Amends, okay, but anyways, back then like you could hack in and kind of like find where the Emerald Dream was going to be in original WoW, and they like had files for it. It was very unfinished, very unfinished. But you just knew, right? The Emerald Dream had been in WoW stories and lore for a long time, a long time. And so then you finally got it, and you're like, wow, that's awesome. That's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love stuff like that. Obviously, not every zone can be one of those, right? But then you get to the Emerald Dream, and you're like, oh, yeah, it's cool. It's plants. I'm just excited to be here. Right. I'm just excited. It's the Emerald Dream. That's cool that we're here. It's exciting. It was pretty. It was a pretty zone, but, that was it. Undermine's interesting because it's kind of a mix of both, right? I don't know if you know this. Do you know how long Undermine has been referenced?
No clue.
Dude, there are beta maps, like design maps for World of Warcraft from like the 90s. When the game was like in early development. Yeah. From the 90s with Undermine marked on it.
Oh, wow.
Like,
that's kind of nuts.
So Undermine was like if you looked at the map, you'd be like, that doesn't look anything like the current map, right? The Eastern Kingdoms looks remotely familiar. The shape is generally kind of similar. Northrend, though, is kind of an odd spot. It's up to your like top left. Kalimdor is far to the left, but it's small, right? Like, like Kalimdor now is like about the same size as the Eastern Kingdoms. Kalimdor on this map is like small. And then to the bottom left, you have like Ulduar. And then somewhere kind of in the middle, lower part middle, is Undermined. And I believe it was supposed to still be underground even back then. But if I remember correctly, they were going to use it as like this connection point for all the different like goblin areas. They're going to connect them so you could like traverse faster. But they just couldn't pull it off. It was just going to be like way too complex to make it happen. And so they scrapped it. And so Undermine has been referenced. It's been around. We've known it. We've known of its existence longer than World of Warcraft has been around. So we finally got it, right? So it's one of those things where I'm going, I'm like, dude, we finally get to see it. This is going to be awesome. This is going to be sick. And then you take that like rocket machine thing through that tunnel.
Yeah.
And you walk into the station, and like I gotta give the design team credits. Like when you're looking through the station, not even out of the station, you're just kind of seeing through it, seeing the light coming in. Oh man, it was a cool feeling. Like just seeing Undermine.
Oh yeah.
It looked so good, and it feels like a city. I love city zones. It's not. I mean, I know that I'm sure it takes a lot of developer work to make them, but Suramar was a great one. I love city zones where it's not just like, oh, hey, you're in the city and it's a safe zone, so just fly around and goof off. It's like, no, like actually this is like a city, and you got to kind of maneuver through it. And I'm so glad we don't have flying mouse. I'm so glad we don't have flying mouse in there, because that's what you would do, right? You would just like fly to the next spot, and this forces us to just be a part of this city that exists and kind of working our way up, navigating it. It's kind of got like a film noir vibe at times. Dude, it's just, I love it. I'm really enjoying this.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of people. Well, I don't know if I should say this. No, I think I will. I think a lot of people were probably disappointed in the size of it, right? And I think that's exactly the opposite of what you're saying. Like you're saying, it's tight knit, it's very close together, it's very like, I don't want to say on top of each other, but it's very like central, right? Like it's not, hey, I got to fly all the way over here to do this one quest. It's like, oh, I just drive over here and I'm there.
It's funny because to me it feels huge. The city feels huge. But it depends on what we're comparing it to, right? Like, right?
I mean,
you're right. Like if I'm comparing it to like a city, right? Like to me, this is a freaking huge city. Someone else is probably looking at it and they're thinking like, well, Onaran Plains is bigger than this. Yeah, of course, Onaran Plains is bigger than that. It's literally just it's plains, dude. They don't have to do it. There's no development work that goes to that. And in order for you to go from one spot to the next spot, you got to travel 20 miles, right? So, this I really like. It's just a different vibe. Sometimes I want that huge sprawling zone, and sometimes I want a zone that feels big because it's of the way it's designed, not big just because it is sheer scale big, right?
Yeah.
And I think the drive system helps with that too. Right? Now the drive system makes it really easy to traverse the city, but because you're traversing the city at a high speed while trying to dodge everything and kind of struggling to do so, it forces the city. It still helps the city feel big. Because you're not just going up and over, you're like actually going through it, going around buildings. The need to like actually like follow the road a little bit and be windy with it does make it feel bigger as you traverse, which is cool.
Yeah. There's a couple things about like the actual map design that I think are really cool. I think they do a good job with the buildings. Like I think all the buildings look very goblin-y and kind of true to the city. The middle thing, like the middle hotel kind of deal, that feels really neat, unique.
Yeah.
And the fact that the raid is kind of in that makes that almost seem unique as well. To me, I feel like raids are always like, oh, like this is like you enter like this giant like castle or whatever. Yeah. This is like, hey, you go into this hotel, which is kind of cool. I haven't figured out where the new dungeon isn't in this zone, is it?
I don't know. I don't know where the entrance to the new. Oh, you know what it probably is? I could be wrong. It's probably back in the Ringing Deeps where the like little dam thing is with the wire that comes out.
Oh yeah.
It's probably around
I think
there.
You're right.
Yeah, that feels like the right spot for it, but I could be wrong. It could very well be in Undermined itself. I actually just have no clue.
Okay. Yeah, because I just haven't. I mean, I haven't really been looking for it because I told myself there's no point in doing it until season 2 bumps out.
Yeah, I mean, I might go in just to get the lay of the land, but again, it's only normal. It's only normal mode, right? So I don't know.
Is it worth your time? I mean, if you just like plow through it, then it might be worth your time. But I mean, I would hard gamble it.
If I did it, it would be like with friends for the purpose of just taking our time looking at routes, trying to figure out what might feel good. Yeah.
So I know this isn't my thing, but I know this is kind of your thing, and it might be some of the listeners' thing, but the general lore kind of ask of that, the storyline, how does that meet your expectations? Because I don't care anything about the lore. I'm the freaking skipping Andy that just skips through everything. Like, I think I watched one cutscene and that was about it.
Yeah, I mean, okay, here's the deal. I was gonna pretend. I was trying so hard to pretend like this podcast was recorded at a normal podcast time. We're recording this pretty dang early. Chicken's got to be out of town for a little bit. So, admittedly, I actually haven't finished the story yet. I've made a decent dent into it. I haven't finished it yet. So, there are gonna be story spoilers, but also if you've completed the story and you're feeling like you want me to speak on more of the story, and I'm not. That's why I'm not. I'm just not. I haven't finished it yet. Okay, I haven't finished it yet.
Right.
So, so the big thing coming in right now, I think, has been, I'm brain fried. Okay, like, what is the connection to Xal'atath, right? So going into this patch, everybody's just kind of been like, okay, well, how is Xal'atath actually connected to this? Like, what's that?
Sure.
Like, what's going on? Why are we? Because don't get me wrong, everybody wants to go to Undermine. They love the goblins. They're excited for this.
Yeah.
But they don't know why, right? Like, why? Like, we just killed a spider queen, and now we're gonna go hang out with the goblins. And
right.
Gallywix is back, right? Like, what's the value here? And so, what I love that they've tied it in actually really well. Actually, like really, really well.
Okay.
So, you've seen Gallywix running around, right? He's that kind of fat-looking, chubby goblin, right? Gallywix was for a minute I'm just gonna give you like a quick lore overview so you kind of know what's going on. And again, I could be rusty on this. If I'm rusty on any of this, I actually, funny enough, the expansions that Gallywix was in, I actually didn't play those ones, weirdly enough. So if I'm wrong on anything, just correct me if I'm wrong, and we can get that corrected up. But with that said, Gallywix was the faction leader for the Horde. The Horde goblins.
Horde?
No, he was faction leader for the goblins who were in the Horde, right?
Gotcha.
Not all goblins actually joined the Horde. For the longest time, goblins were a neutral race, and they often helped the Horde. They often helped the Horde. Gazlo had basically designed and built Orgrimmar for Thrall, and I think he redesigned it with when they did the redesign with Garrosh. I think he helped with that as well. I don't remember. I'm blanking. But anyways, so while the goblins were assisting the Horde, they were doing so like on a paid basis. Does that make sense? Like they were like paid for this work, and they were doing the work, but they were never really truly a part of the Horde. And then there was a group of goblins. I think at some point you should play the Goblin Starting Zone so you kind of get that lore to it. But they were kicked off the island that they lived on. Like it was a volcano eruption or something. And so Gallywix takes all those goblins to the Horde. And he's like, hey, basically they get rescued by the Horde. And the Horde are like, yeah, you can join us. And so they join the Horde. Gallywix kind of does shady Gallywix things and gets kicked out and leaves the Horde. And so now he's on his own. And I think that was when Gazlo was asked to help, right? That goblin that we've been running around with. I think that's when Thrall was like, yo, Gazlo, you want to come lead these goblins over here? I trust you. I really trust you. And so Gazlo came and helped the goblins. I could be wrong on that lore. If I am, somebody correct me on that. Goblin lore is not my specialty. My degree is in Draenei. So just clarifying. Draenei Night Elf is like what I have my degree in. But anyways, so the question then was, okay, well, why is Gazlo back? What is the role that what's the role Gallywix is playing? What's going on? So we get in and we see these 4 factions going on. Well, 5 factions, right? Now we have the Dark Fuse faction, right? You have Venture Co., Steam Weedle, all those factions going on. Fun fact, that Noggenfogger guy, by the way, I think you've seen Ron. He was the one who was like trying to do the repair work and hide the Dark Heart.
Yeah.
So the Noggenfogger guy is actually, he's been in WoW since Classic.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, he used to make and sell a potion called the Noggenfogger Elixir that would like kind of give you one random attribute, like it would make you turn into a skeleton or make you like float. And so people would like buy. There's like a game where you can play like Noggenfogger roulette, where like you go to like a high place, and then everybody jumps off a ledge and drinks one while they're in the air, to see if they'll float down to safety or if they'll just splat on the ground.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's fun. So that's been around forever. So it's cute. It's a cute little nod now that he's been promoted to like a cooler role or something, I guess. But yeah. So Galix is coming in and he's being asked to repair the Dark Heart by what's her name? Oh, dude, I'm so blank. I rushed in to record a podcast from work, so I'm like a little behind. But I can't believe Xal'atath. Xal'atath is kind of working with Galliwix to repair the Dark Heart. Now you might be like, well, why would any goblins be able to repair this thing? Because the Dark Heart is a prototype of what's called the Demon Soul or the Dragon Soul. It kind of goes by both names, which was a weapon that was used by Deathwing to kind of attack other dragons, and then eventually used against Deathwing to kill him ultimately. But the Dark Heart was worked on in many aspects by goblins. Goblins were very intricately linked to a lot of Deathwing's creations. And so goblins actually, even though I don't think goblins were involved with the Dark Heart's creation originally, but they had enough involvement with the Demon Soul that I think they're probably still the best ones at fixing the Dark Heart. Just knowledge passed down. And so that's why they work on the Dark Heart. They're using the Black Blood, probably using the Black Blood to repair it. Again, I don't know. I haven't gotten that far into the story. Where I'm at right now is we're trying to chase down the Ethereal who's trying to steal the Dark Heart, right? And so now the Ethereals are involved. I don't. It seems like the Ethereals are an opposing force against Xal'atath, but these Ethereals, as far as I can tell, seem to be working for the Void, but maybe not. Again, I don't know. I haven't made that far in the story. So it's kind of like, okay, well, Xal'atath is working for the Void. Are these Ethereals working for the Void? Or are they opposing each other? Maybe the Ethereals are actually kind of on our side. Maybe we'll end up liking these Ethereals. There are new Ethereal model updates, which is a pretty big deal. That we're not just using the pre-existing Ethereal models for all of this. Which kind of tells me there's a chance that we could get Ethereal allied races. In order for that to happen, they would want Ethereals to have to have a reason for joining us. So this could be the story that allows it to happen. But all that to say, it makes total sense to me that Xal'atath would go to Galliwix to have this repaired. And it makes total sense to me that the goblins would look at Black Blood and be like, yo, this is a resource. We can monetize this. We can make weapons from it. That is such a goblin thing. So it's very interesting to me how they took this theme of Undermine, this big, crazy, zany goblin city, and actually, like, dude, it totally makes sense for where the story's going. You're actually kind of like, oh, yeah, they absolutely need goblins to repair the Dark Heart. No one else can do that. Well, I mean, other people probably could, but goblins have the experience. They have the knowledge from their time with Deathwing, so they absolutely could repair this thing. The Black Blood would be an enticing thing for them to have if it offers, just like how they were kind of going after, not the Khajiite, but the Azurite. They're going after the Azurite, right? And you know what the goblins are? The Undermine is an underground city. So we've been spending all our time underground. The Black Blood is underground. Yeah, this kind of makes sense. So I've been pretty hyped about like kind of the story of what's going on right now. Now, I'm sure people are listening like, hey, swag, when you finish that campaign, you're going to be surprised. Probably.
Oh my.
So did any of that make sense? Sorry, I was trying so hard to keep a secret that we're recording early because I was like, oh, dude, people are going to know that it's not the most up-to-date content, but I don't know, man. Once I started talking about lore, I was like, I can't keep that a secret. I can't pretend to know story I haven't done yet.
I gotta be honest.
Yeah,
that's noble of you,
dude. Did did that make sense for you though? Like, did I explain that well? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you did a good job explaining it for me, who's really not into lore, like even a tiny little bit. I mean, you definitely explained it. I mean, the backstory of Gallowix and all that kind of stuff. And don't get me wrong, I try to follow along as much as possible.
Yeah.
To the things, but like it really does kind of get hard when you have such like I don't want to say a rich backstory, but like you have such like I mean, the backstory for WoW just goes back like decades, right?
Yeah.
So like, there's always like, there was that was a couple weeks ago that I think I was doing like time walking for oh my goodness, maybe Cataclysm. Like it was one of the first things. I think it was Cataclysm.
Okay.
And I asked you about the Mortizon thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, I thought we killed him in, like, I thought with Chromie we went through and we fought Mortizon, but then you're like, no, like, we've done that a couple times and, like, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, because that one was, it's time, right? So it's like, because he travels through time, even if we kill him, right, that doesn't mean that we're not going to still fight past versions of him, right?
Yeah.
So, like we could kill Murazon, right, today. And then tomorrow, a version from him 12 years ago shows up and starts trying to fight us, right? So, even though he's technically dead and we know that we'll kill him eventually, he's now back causing trouble because, so it is interesting, but it means that there's only a limited amount of stuff that can be done because, we know the end point now. But anyways, sorry, rabbit trailing.
No. It's just kind of neat how everything ties together. Like, even like, stuff from 15 years ago in the game is still like relevant to now. So
yeah, dude, Undermine showing up on maps right back in 1999.
Well, exactly. Yeah, like that's freaking nuts. And then you have like just the storyline that literally ties everything together in from almost day one of the game's existence, right? Yeah. So I think that's another reason why I just find it really hard to kind of just follow lore, because there's such a deep back history and a deep storyline that it makes it a little hard. But so anything else that you're really just like I want to say this about Undermined. Oh, real quick, I do want to say I think it's very goated that they put in a teleport from Dornigal. That is a win. That was the most goated thing that they've done.
But it's also very goblin-y, right? It's very goblin-y.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it is very goblin-y. But that was like, I mean, in Zaralek Caverns, like, it wasn't that far to fly from Baldraken into the caverns. But oh my goodness, was it ever annoying.
Dude, I will be the first to say. That the distance to get into Zaralek Caverns, right? And it wasn't even difficult. It wasn't hard. It didn't take that long. No. It didn't take that long. But just the amount of time that it did take to get there severely limited how much stuff I actually did in Zaralek Caverns.
Oh, dude.
Bro, I did
100%.
like nothing, dude. I did the campaign in Zaralek Caverns enough to get that the mount, right? The skinny dragon.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then, boom, done. I don't think I ever finished the campaign in Zaralek Caverns. I just didn't care, dude. I just didn't care. I was like, okay, whatever. They're like, oh, but the lower Niffin. I was like, okay, cool. They can go sniff rocks. I don't know. I don't know to tell you. I don't care, dude. Give me power level, right? But again, though, that was just, hey, here's a big hole in the ground. Go have fun. And now it's like, no, dude, here's a crazy city. And I think there's a lot of things here that are fun, right? Like, dude, I'm trying to work through the campaign. I want to get the campaign done. But even still, a couple times I just paused and was like, I want to do something goofy. And I clicked that little button while you're driving where you can ask for a job. Have you done that?
Oh, yeah.
And then you have to like go like help a lady across the road, or like I think one of them I found like a crab on top of a pipe and had to like help him down. It was like a pet or something.
Sure.
Yeah, it's just fun little world building stuff.
Dude, that feels like oh my goodness. It feels like that game that used to be on like the GameCube and the PlayStation. It was that Simpsons game. Oh my goodness.
Yes, the Simpsons like cab driving one.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. When I did the first couple of those, I was like, this is exactly what this is. Like it's oh my goodness, it's gonna bug me. One of these days I'll figure out what it's called. But
because originally I was thinking it would be like the taxi system in Grand Theft Auto, where like if you steal a taxi, you can like request to pick people up. And then it'll just be like, oh, go pick up this person, then drive them over here. But then like it ended up being like actual like little jobs. Like you actually show up and you're like, oh, go find my crab, and you're like looking around. You're like, where's my crab?
Right.
It's like sitting on this like pipe, and you're like, how the heck do I get up there?
Right.
Can't fly up
goodness. There. Yeah. So I do think that is one of the neat little things the drive mechanic can do is taking the jobs and doing that little S thing. But yeah. Any final things before we maybe break and talk about some more season 2 stuff?
I think that's about it. I've just want to say again though, I've really enjoyed this patch so far, and it's tough because sometimes, like, dude, I want to be playing right now, dude. I mean, we got to record the podcast, but I would love to just be playing, and that's not always me. I'm not like usually with like patches like this. I'm like, oh, I just gotta get through it, and then next week I'm gonna go into my dungeons. But right now I'm just enjoying it, dude. I really want to just make the most of it and get as much out of it as I can before I have to go do dungeons because it's just fun. It's just fun.
Yeah. It definitely is one of those zones that I feel like it'll at least be enjoyable for a week. And to be honest, I think it'll be enjoyable for longer than that. So,
yep.
Anyways, yeah, so there's been, dude, I don't know what's going on. Ton of interviews with WoW and Wowhead and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So there's 3 more interviews that actually came out that they talked a little bit more about M+. They talked about the dinars again. I think that's a big thing.
They gave us like an actual date for the dinars, right? People were kind of trying to guess on that before.
Yeah, which is really nutty. And then they also talked a little bit about longevity of the game and just the general feel of the game. And I kind of wanted to touch on the dungeon stuff first. And they were talking about just general season 2 updates, and they really put an emphasis on the squash from what used to be OG plus 10s now being like the Mythic 0 run.
Yeah.
And just how like basically those were like meaningless and now they're almost still meaningless in my opinion. And he kind of broke it down into delves and like, hey, delves are kind of its own thing, and you know, delves exist, and if that makes you required to play delves, it's you know, it kind of requires people to play delves. But there's one thing that kind of grabbed me from this article, and I'll just read it from what he said.
Yeah.
He said, he was talking about delves. He was like, oh, you know, delves exist. We wanted to make this end game content for people that they like that kind of play style, right? That's what they preferred. They didn't want to be forced to do dungeons, right?
Yeah.
So he was talking, he said, you know, there's no surprise, but we're hearing from players that over the course of season 1 that they really love dungeons, and that's their primary activity they enjoy, but they weren't satisfied with it. Mm-hmm. And they're spurring actions to season 2. And then he goes on to say, we're really trying to improve the overall experience, blah, blah, blah. As we laid out the blog for the next few weeks, you know, we want to make these things. And then he also talks about the rewards for lower end system and how that will transport, you know, players who come from delves and delves gear. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the biggest, like the absolute biggest issues with season 1 was just the fact that delves gear was so high leveled. Yep. I mean, you basically could get all hero track gear from delves. You could, you know, you're basically like 220 eye level, and that was purely from delves. That was all like single player content. You know, you could basically jump into a 7 if you knew what you were doing.
Yeah.
In Mythic Plus and probably have no issues. So that kind of makes me feel good about, you know, the delves thing, but then even now they're still like, hey, we're gonna make it so you can get Gilded Crest from delves.
Yeah.
I don't know. I you know, Capo last week kind of gave me a little bit of justice and a little bit of, you know, warm fuzzy feeling like, oh, you know, season 2 like Mythic Plus seems really good, but I think I'm just gonna be concerned until we get told otherwise. You know what I mean? Like, it's literally going to be like innocent till proven guilty. Like, I'm just gonna assume that there's no change in Mythic Plus until like I actually do it, and then I see the change.
Yeah, I think what's tough is there's a few elements going there, right? Like first of all, what does all that mean, right? Because when you look at when you watch the interview or you read the transcript of the interview, they don't actually they don't name anything, right? They're just like, oh, dude, like we want the on ramp to be better, and like we understand that players are going in for gear, and that there's okay, cool, you understand it, but what are you doing? Like, what are you actually doing? Because we're not seeing anything on the PTR that tells us that you're doing anything. We're not seeing anything in the files that tells us you're doing anything. As far as I can tell, you're just giving us lip service and moving on. And this is why it matters. This is why it matters, because in the I think it's that interview or one of the interviews, they're just like, and people just have to understand at some point, right? There's going to be a key level that's your limit, and what you can do is what you can do, right? And that's fine. That is fair. That is fair. But nobody should be coming out of Delves with gear at a certain difficulty that they can't actually do that content for, right? So, like, if you're coming out of Delves, right, and you got like 620, we're talking season 1 numbers right now, right? 620 eye level gear, and you're trying to go into M+, and maybe I'm exaggerating, let's say 615 eye level gear, right? And you're like, and you're trying to go into like a +4. Let's say a +4, right? If I'm queuing up for a group, and I see someone queuing for a +4 and they have 615 eye level gear, I'll be like, wow, dude, you're pretty dang over geared. I'm taking you, right?
Exactly.
And then they come into that 4 and they're dying to every mechanic. I'm gonna be sitting there like, what the heck? What the heck? Right. And I think that's the problem I have. The problem I have is like gear needs to be equivalent. It's part of the reason why the myth track gear from dungeons is such a difficult conversation, because on one hand it's like, oh dude, just let us get it from the dungeon so that we don't have to have just myth track from the vault. But then you're like, okay, but also if you're raiders only get 1 shot per boss at myth track gear, and they're not even doing full clears every week, right? Like oftentimes they're just trying to get 1 boss down. It's like, can we even get 1 boss down, right? And so man, it's just such a different dynamic, right? But that balance, right? Like I want hero track gear to drop at the same difficulty of content between dungeons and raiding, right? And so like if I'm raiding and the boss will drop hero track gear, I want that fight to be just as difficult as if I'm running a plus, I don't know what drops hero now, 7? Is it +7 or something? Or +8, whatever it is, right?
I think it was +6 now. In season 2, I think it's going to be +6.
Okay, so
now it's a +8.
Okay, right now it's +8, right? I want right, and now it sounds like part of their answer is like, oh well, we'll just make easier dungeons drop better gear. But then, dude, then you have to go, okay, well, was that equivalent now to raid, right? Like, does raid have to drop? Like, do the last 2 bosses of hero have to of heroic raid have to drop myth track gear? You and I would probably say, hey, you and I would be like, you know what, we'd like that, but that wouldn't be good. That wouldn't be good for the game. We would like it, but that probably wouldn't be good. And so that's the problem I have with the Delve question is like, hey, like, dude, I'm fine with Delve. Dude, if Delves want to drop myth track gear, I'm okay with that. But that needs to be just as hard as like middle of mythic raiding, right? That dungeon needs to be just as hard. Like I'm sorry, but like only like 1% of players should be able to accomplish that, right? Like whatever it takes, right? And so I think that to me is the question, right? Like the question isn't like, hey, is the on ramp for M+ okay? Because I think if you got rid of Delves, then the answer is like, yeah, the on ramp for M+ is fine. But you can't get rid of Delves because Delves are actually good content that people enjoy. Yeah, people enjoy Delves. Yeah, right? Dude, they love doing Delves. And so you don't take the Delves away from them. Don't take the Delves away from them. But how do you make sure the reward of that Delve? And I think they went way too far overboard season 1 because they wanted people to love Delves. And so season 1, they just went, you know what? Listen, dude, this is the best way to gear is to go through Delves. The best way to gear is to go through Delves. And I think that was a little wonky. We kind of knew that. We were talking. I don't know if we talked on the podcast about that at that time. I don't even know if the podcast was out. It had to have been out at that point. I don't know. But I remember talking with friends. Looking at the start of the War Within, just being like, I don't know, dude. I don't know, man. That to me is the question, and it doesn't seem like they're going to do that. If anything, it seems like they're more willing to look at the question of like, well, should you get myth track gear from doing delves, right? That seems like the question they're asking right now, more than right, yeah, more than the question of like, hey, should you? And again, if you're listening to the podcast and you're like, and by the way, we gotta stop ranting about this all the time, but it does need to get fixed, right? Because if you listen to the podcast and you're like, oh, Swag, you just don't want me to have rewards. No, that's not true at all. I just want to make sure that you and I are doing the same difficulty of content for the same reward. That's all. Yeah. That's my argument. My argument is like, hey, I don't want to be like, oh, well, this is the route for people who aren't good at the game to get good gear, right? That's not what I want, right? Like, I want it to be like, hey, no, like, these are different routes because you enjoy different ways to play the game, but the gear acquisition comes at the same difficulty level. And what that should mean, theoretically, what that should mean is somebody that's getting hero track gear in a delve should be able to quickly adapt into content that drops hero track gear in dungeons, and should be able to quickly adapt to content that drops hero track gear in raid, because all that is PvE content, but maybe it's not identical content. It doesn't be identical content, but just that the skill sets can transfer, and that the difficulty being similar means that you as a player know how to adapt to those different environments.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about it now, like, how did we gear up for dungeons in Dragonflight, right? We just ran lower dungeons, right?
Yeah, like
that's what you did, right?
Yeah.
But now, and maybe not even M0s, like, I'm thinking like maybe like 10s or 11s, like, before they, squished it down. Like, I mean, that's just what we did, right? We ran like 10s, 11s, 12s, 13s, 15s, right?
Dude, we started with like 6s, right? Like, dude, I remember the first time I did the 10, right? And I was like, whoa, wow, this is crazy. And then now that's like an equivalent of a 2, right? So I do think they are kind of trying to meet somewhere. The problem is they're trying to bring that down a little bit. But I think the bigger issue that they're running into is players are getting juiced on gear and delves. Because again, the game teaches you how to do a delve, right? And right, if you're a new player coming back to WoW, the game, or coming back, or a new player, the game's teaching you how to do delves. It's like, oh, hey, come check out delves. These are pretty cool, aren't they? Pretty cool. The game does not teach you how to find an M+ group. It does not.
No, it doesn't.
Like, listen, I guarantee there are so many players out there in World of Warcraft, because I've encountered them as I've been teaching people how to play WoW. There are so many people out there in WoW who have no clue on earth that the M+ system even exists.
That's kind of crazy,
right? Guarantee, because the game doesn't teach you that, right? It probably taught you back in Legion, but it doesn't teach you that anymore. And so I think what's happening, right, is you're having players who are like, well, the game taught me to do delves, I'm doing delves are giving me gear, I get juiced up on gear, and then it's like, oh, somebody in this guild I'm in just mentioned that M+ exists, I want to try that out. I'm juiced up on gear, I go into a +4 because I got invited to one because my eye level's so good, and I just get wrecked. Just get absolutely destroyed. And then I look at what the reward is for that +4, and I'm like, wait a second, this dungeon doesn't even offer me anything. I don't even get a reward from this, because my gear, I've outgeared this dungeon, and it's so hard. Why would I even do this? It's so hard, and the reward is worse. Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't know, man. I don't know. So again, I'm not anti-delve. I just want all PvE content balance, right? to be equal in difficulty for the reward that it gives. That's all I'm saying. And you have to account for some of those elements of like, hey, you don't have the stress of teaming up with a person, right? So what would be the solo player equivalent of having that stress, right? I don't know what that means.
I mean, we just want there to be a balance, right? I mean, I don't want to have to grind delves to get quick gear so that I can jump right into 6s and 7s, right?
Yep.
But I mean, that's what it's leaning towards, because that's just the easier content, and that's well, I shouldn't say it's easier. It's subjectively easier, and it's less time consuming, right? So that's what you're gonna do, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyways,
but I mean, we can rant about that all the time. I think the reason why we're talking about it again for the 30th time on the podcast is just because this article comes out where they go, yeah, we see that this is a problem, and we're fixing it, but they don't actually say what they're doing to fix it, and it doesn't even seem like they're fixing it, right?
I know.
It's like, oh, well, our fix is to, we're just going to give more gilded crests to Delve players, and like there's gonna be an on ramp for M plus, and we'll just make M plus gear easier, right? And you're like, wait, what? I don't know if that's the answer. Like I don't know. I don't know if that's the answer.
I know, man.
Oh well. What can you do about it? And then there's also the Nagura interview, right?
Yeah. So that one, they talked a little bit about just the renowned track for the raid. They talked about the dinars. Just talking quickly about the general renowned track. They wanted to feel like kind of like the finery system in the current raid for season 1, where you kind of defeat bosses, you kind of get tokens. It kind of puts it back towards a raiding, right? They wanted to add this dinar system. It is confirmed that the dinars won't come out until the 0.5 patch, which I think is perfect, right? It kind of gives you that, hey, I've been grinding this raid for what, maybe 2.5 months at this point, and I just haven't gotten the trinket I want. Now I can kind of get that trinket, right? I haven't got my best trinket, but now most people are probably, I'd say, getting 50% of the achievements they want in their raid, and now they can kind of go back and get that, right? I don't know if that's exactly how it's going to work, but they kind of allude to it kind of working as like a catch-up system, but kind of not. So I don't necessarily know exactly how it's going to work, but they do.
Yeah, dinar is such an interesting thing. While we pause there for a second, dinar is such an interesting thing.
Go ahead.
I don't know if I like dinars or not, and I'm probably like the only podcaster out there saying that right now. I think everybody else is like, heck yeah, dinars, dude, give me 30 of them, right? Yeah. But the thing is, WoW is a 20-year-old game, and usually what happens in a game like this over time, as people are playing it, right? Like you introduce like a little just a little reward in there, a little piece of candy, right? And people go, oh, I like that. And all of a sudden, the next thing you know, all they're eating is Tootsie Rolls, right?
Yeah, right.
And it's like, oh wait, dude, the substance of this game is gone, right? Like all I'm eating is like the sweet parts now. Like all the stuff that was savory and like made me feel well fed and like enjoying the game is gone. And I think we feel a lot of it right now because WoW is much more of a seasonal game than maybe it's ever been before.
It definitely is.
Some of that's good, right? Some of that's good that we can kind of ebb and flow, but some of it like misses. Again, WoW players will never be happy. No matter what Blizzard does, WoW players will never be happy. I'll never be happy, Blizzard. I promise you. No matter what you do, I will complain. If you make me log on every day to get little bits of player power, I will complain. If you don't make me log on every day to get little bits of player power, and then I don't see my friends on every day when I log on, I'll also complain, right? So like. You can't really win, and dinars are one of those pieces where it's such a unique thing because it's kind of just like Blizzard literally just going, we're just give you what you want. Like here's a token, go buy whatever freaking piece of gear you want, and it's kind of lame, dude. I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of lame. I get it. Okay, well, maybe it's because I'm not a DPS, right? I think DPS players, aren't as maybe they're not as tough and sturdy as us tank players. So, like, it is what it is. If you're DPS, I don't know, get a shield. I don't know what to tell you, right? Use a defensive.
Oh, my gosh.
But, right, like, there's that element of, like, I'll never be a good DPS until I have this one Spy Master's trinket.
Yeah, right.
And it's like, I can't enjoy the game until I have my BIS trinket. Okay, why? Because Wowhead told you that?
Yeah, right.
Okay. But then at the same time, like, I also get it when it's like you're playing the game a bunch and you're like, oh, dude, I've been killing this boss nonstop, repeatedly trying to kill this boss, and I just can't seem to kill this boss, or it just never drops, right? Like, and I just want the item. I'm trying so hard I can't get it. Every time it drops, either it doesn't drop or someone else rolls on it and wins it. We just had 3 raids in a row where we killed this guy and some like person we found in the group finder ninja looted it, right? Like,
yeah, right.
Right. And so to some degree it's kind of like, okay, I do get it, right? Like at some point, but then at the same time it's also like, okay, but some of these items are supposed to be these like fun, exciting, special kind of, that's part of an MMO, right? Part of an MMO is like this is a rare special weapon right here, right? And only some players are gonna find it. It's legendary. And now it's like, well, if Blizzard adds a legendary item to the game, they have to make it so everybody can... Like what the heck is legendary about that at that point? If everybody has one, right? Like literally the last time they put a legendary item in the game, they had to add a system in that like guaranteed everybody would get it eventually if they kept trying. But again, though, WoW's a different game than it once was, right? Like WoW is a high-end competitive game where people are trying to basically leaderboard, right? They're trying to score against each other.
Yeah.
At which point, then, you don't want this huge disparity of gear, right? Like you do want the people to have the ability to get it. So dinars are such an interesting thing where part of me is like, yeah, I would like to have a dinar so that one item that I really want, I can just get, right? And then part of me is also like, yeah, but is this actually good? Is this actually good that like there's never again going to be like a rare item in WoW? Because even if it's rare at the 1.5 patch, we'll just get it.
You'll just get it, yeah,
we'll
right?
Just get it. We'll just get it. Like we're just giving it. And that to me is odd. It is interesting that they've removed it from the renown track.
Yeah.
They said that they heard feedback that it was too late in the renown track and people weren't happy about that. I don't listen, dude. If it's my opinion, is it should be on the back third of the expansion. It should be at the like tail end. It should be like 0.7. Yeah, it should be at the point in my mind. In my mind, it should be at the point where like, if you really, really, really want to get it, at that point, like, yeah, sure, dude, we got it. We got like a couple months left of the expansion here.
Yeah, right.
Right. It kind of reminds me of what Capo was saying last week, right? Like a lot of the M+ title pushing is at the back half of the back end of the season when like that really matters, right? Because that's where like you're really geared up, you're juiced up, everybody knows mechanics, everything's been nerfed more, right? Yep. So to me, it's kind of like, okay, if you're a title pusher, yeah, that kind of guarantees that one crucial piece everybody needs, they'll have that. But at the same time, on the majority of the season, like, hey, if you get it, it's a pretty special honor that you got that item. Otherwise, hey, dude, at the end you can kind of snag it before the season's over. But now but again though, the 0.5 patch, maybe that will feel fine. I was hoping like a 0.7 patch, to be honest, rather than 0.5. But we'll see. I just don't want it to be like season 1 where the 0.5 patch was like a week and a half into the expansion.
Oh, right, yeah.
It wasn't a week and a half, but it felt very early on.
Yeah, it was very soon.
I was like, okay, season's been out for a month. Here's the 0.5 patch, and you're like, what the heck? What's going on?
That's definitely what it felt like.
Yeah, dude, it was like 4 weeks, and then we had a new patch because they were like, but they had the anniversary stuff going on. That was crazy.
Yeah,
I don't think that's gonna be the case this time. Hopefully, you'll feel good. You want it to feel like at the point where you're just like, all right, everything's kind of slowing down. Here's the item, right? But anyways, that's how I feel about dinars. Dinars are an interesting thing where like, I don't know if I love that they're there, but also I'll be happy when I get one. So I guess right, it's that question of like me trying to be logical versus also just wanting what I want, right? Be like, well, I want this thing. Is it bad for me? Maybe it is bad for me, but right. And so those two things in my head are kind of going back and forth. Like, okay, well, I want to just be able to get that random trinket that I really want. But also, maybe that will actually make my experience less fun overall, and then I'll quit playing WoW. So who knows?
Yeah, it's kind of like that. I'm trying not to say something that will like. I don't want to like at anyone, but like it's kind of like that day and age we live with, like inclusivity, where like they want people to have what they want and to be able to have that power, right? Like, I'm talking about the legendary, like the axe and the evoker legendary. It was like, hey, we very much want people to have this because we don't want people to feel left out on this, right?
Yeah, right. But part of that too is game design, right?
It's like, yeah. I mean, it's like if something's so rare but everyone has it, then is it really rare? And it's not.
Yeah, there used to be this piece to the game where, like, back in the day, right, like there'd be like a legendary item in the game, and you'd have to actually go through like, this process to be able to almost craft it, right? Like almost kind of craft this thing or get this thing, get the drop, whatever. And your guild would work towards that the whole time, pretty much knowing who's gonna get that item. They'd be like, we're working towards that. This is going to this person. They've been working hard. They've been a high value in our guild. They're incredible. they're gonna get this item, and then they would get that item and be like, "Whoa, this dude's got this thing, and it's amazing," and like, "Wow, he's our guy, awesome," right? Which honestly, like, from an RPG storytelling element, is like really cool, right? That's where you can. That's where you feel a lot of that like Dungeons and Dragons influence to World of Warcraft, where it's kind of like, wow, dude, like what we do as a unit, but this guy is like kind of a little bit of a hero right now, right? Like he's kind of filling those shoes, and maybe in the next raid it'll be somebody else doing that, right? But right now it's kind of this weird like, hey, we have to give it to everybody because if we don't give it to everybody, people complain. But also just a heads up because balancing. And I think part of it's competitive content, right? Competitive content didn't really exist back then. So I think part of it's the competitive content, which is a problem, right? The very parts of the game that I love now are also the things that cause the problems that annoy me, right? But it's like competitive content, right? So like when Fearlath came out, right? Let's use Ret Paladins as an example, right? Yeah. Ret Paladins were tuned to be weaker until like without the axe, right? Like they were tuned to be in line with other classes damage wise when they had the axe. When they had the axe. My thing is that like my thing is that there's always going to be specs that are at the top of the chart, right? Yep. Blizzard is never going to 100% balance everybody. I'm sorry. And by the way, I don't think Blizzard even wants to 100% balance everybody. They've gone on record saying they prefer the pendulum method where different specs kind of get the spotlight. It's why they nerfed AUG into the freaking ground, dude. Those AUG nerfs were brutal. And it was 100% because they're like, hey, we need AUG to not be meta. Like they were just like, you can tell they're just like, we're killing AUG as a spec because we just need it to not be meta. It's been meta for 4 seasons. They just couldn't let it happen again. And so they pendulum swing, right? And to me, I'm like, okay, well, why not like, let's say Fearlath was coming back out, right? Legendary Axe coming out. Paladins can use it. Red Paladins can use it. Why not tune Paladins in a way where they're pretty good. They're like pretty good. But then if they have Fearlath, then they're just like at the top of the chart, right?
Yeah, right.
And that way you're looking at it and you're like, okay, you know what? Yeah, Paladins with the Fearlath are kind of goated. And if you have one in your group, that's kind of awesome. But also, Paladins are just good in general. So if you can take one, take one, right? Like that would be the option rather than like, oh yeah, Paladins with the legendary. Wait, let me say it correct. Legendary axe are actually kind of like okay. They're like mediocre. But if they don't have the axe, they're total doo-doo, right? Like that feels weird, right? That's like, oh well, the axe puts you at like middle status, right? Where it should be like, oh dude, you got the axe, that's awesome. That puts you at like top tier damage, you know. So I don't know. To me, the role play side of it, the RPG side of it, I'm like, yeah, dude, there should be these legendary items, these special moments that like kind of juice you up and make you feel special. And it shouldn't just kind of by default go to everybody. It should be something really cool that when you see it, you're like, wow, look at that. But WoW is a much more competitive game than it was back then. And so at the same time, right, like, you know, then people complain. They're like, well, you know, like, how am I supposed to get into a group when I don't even have the axe? I want to be pushing for title, but I don't have the axe. So that's kind of, I think, though, that's the extreme of the dinar question, right? For this season, it would probably be Spy Masters, right? How am I supposed to be doing well in dungeons if I don't have Spy Masters? So I don't know, man. That's such a hard duality there of like having something just be a fun RPG element and having something that actually works well in the modern day competitive high-end content WoW stuff. Yeah, sorry. I know I rant on that probably a lot longer than
it's okay.
I rant on Dinars for.
No, I mean it is one of those things where I mean, to your point, I feel like people just either love them or they hate them, right? So, one last thing from this interview, and I don't know if this was just a Naguri, just like random question that they were like, hey, like, you know, we're doing this for Raid, ever think about doing this for M+, but like, what do you think a renowned track for M+ would, do you think that
Dude,
would...
I brought that up the other day, I think on the podcast.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did. I think there should be. I mean, listen. Renowned tracks are just battle passes. They're just battle passes.
Oh yeah, right.
I think I went on a rant on the podcast about it. Having a renowned battle, having like a Mythic Plus battle pass, dude. That'd be sick.
Oh, you definitely. I think you did say that.
Yeah. Anyways, all I'm saying is Nigura stole my idea.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Good deal. Hey, let's touch on a couple things, and then I think we do have one listener question that might we might talk about for a hot minute.
That'd be a fun one.
So I think just a couple things we want to touch on. I think it's cool. I feel like they kind of did this for the campaign.
Yeah.
When War Within launched, but Blizzard did confirm that there is the ability to skip campaign for alts, which is super big, super hype.
Yeah. I get it. I get it for, like, let's say new expansion comes out. You still have to level 60 to 70 or 70, 80 or whatever, no matter what, right? Like, you have to no matter what.
Yeah.
So I don't mind. Like, campaign skips there are nice, but they're not needed. But they're nice. They're nice, right? It just lets you go do something else. But when it's something like this, where it's like, hey, you have 5 alts. If you want to go run this alt through dungeons, you have to go do a 4-hour campaign. Now I'm like, okay, shut up. Or what happens? Yeah, right. What happens? The alternative is I just don't do the campaign on my alts and just run into dungeons, and then I'll forever have these alts that just feel really awkward, right? Because it's like, oh yeah, I just totally skipped the campaign. Right. So every time I go to Undermine, it tries to loop me into something. So I actually really like that, right? Because I'm not running the campain again on my alts. I'm barely running on my main. Okay. Yo, calm down. Just let me skip to the end. Just let me skip to the end.
No, I 100% agree.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a cool little thing. I don't know if you saw the Warband.
They look good. What'd you think?
I already switched it to the Onaran Plains one, kind of looking one.
Mm-hmm. That was beautiful.
Dude, I think it's really cool. I think. I really wish, and I think we talked about this before.
By the way, just clarify, we're talking about the Warband screens. I don't think we actually. I think I cut you off. You never finished it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the new Warband
backdrops. Yeah.
Like intro.
The campsites or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. I think it would be so cool if they let you add your own. Like that would be awesome.
I still thought that'd be hard, but hopefully over time they can just keep adding more and more.
Yeah.
Which would be cool.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't hate. Again, I don't think they have to. I don't think they should have to just give us those things. Like collectibles are awesome, dude. Like imagine if they started adding like old zones, right? Like old zones.
Oh yeah.
In order to get them, they were like random drops. Like let's say they added. I'm just gonna throw out names, right? Let's say they added Grizzly Hills, right, as a backdrop, and then the only way you could get Grizzly Hills was during, time walking for Northrend. It was a random drop from every dungeon. It's like every dungeon has a chance to drop the Grizzly Hills backdrop or the Storm Peaks backdrop or whatever, right? That could be kind of a vibe. That could be kind of a vibe. Yeah. I like reasons to collect things, especially if it's things that are going to be cool. Like, dude, I don't really care that much about like mounts. I like collecting mounts, but I don't go crazy for it. But I like small reasons. Like I like getting stuff, especially stuff that I can actually just use and show off. That's always cool. That's where I'm hoping they do with houses for sure. Anyways, speaking of collecting things, I saw there's more mounts, a lot of mounts this patch.
Ton of mounts. Definitely some are tied behind the Raid Renown track, some are tied behind PvP, some are tied behind Mythic Plus, some are tied behind Raid. The one that stands out to me the most, and also some are tied behind the Cartel.
Yeah.
Getting certain rank with cartels, and I'm not gonna lie, the one that stands out is the Mythic Raid one. And listen, hear me out.
Yeah,
I have never thought about buying a raid push because it's probably ridiculous amount of gold. But if this mount is an automatic drop for cutting edge, I might consider it. Like, this is one of the coolest mounts ever.
Yeah.
It's the Chrome King head. Like, it's the last boss that you fight in the raid. It's literally him as a mount.
It is a cool. Have you seen it? I have seen. It is a very cool mount. Not my particular cup of tea. But 100%, I looked at it, I was like, yeah, Chicken's going to like this mount.
Yeah, dude, that's a sick mount.
I'm just excited for the dinosaur. I like that one.
Oh, yeah. I honestly, I think these are some of the best transmogs. I think these are some of the best mounts we've seen in any given season, point one patch.
Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure. I'm trying to look up. I was trying to do a quick search so I could find out how much gold it would cost to get a cutting edge carry.
Gosh.
But the problem is everywhere I'm looking is actual paid services, which are totally illegal. Don't do them. Don't buy.
Don't do it. Yeah.
It's not worth it. It's not worth it.
Should ask Capo when he was here.
Yeah, we should have asked Capo. What does it cost? What does it cost for a cutting edge kill carry? Which is they're not cheap. I wonder if I was to guess though, dude, probably 5 mil or more gold.
Oh, I was gonna say 10, millions of gold. 5
to 10 mil probably, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, that's but yeah, it's a cool mount. It's a cool mount. Well, on the flip side, you can always just come back after the expansion and try and farm it. So
I'd rather dunk my toes in liquid hot magma.
It's a cool mount though. It's a very cool mount. But again, you know what though, and I think you and I are kind of the same way on this. I love seeing prestige mounts, even if I can't get them. Oh
yeah.
When you and I see somebody flying around Dornigal on one of those things, we're gonna be like, "Yo, that's pretty cool." He did it, right? Do I have it? No, but you know what though? But here's the thing though. If it was just a freebie mount, if anybody could get it super easy, I also don't think we would care. I don't think we would care, right? There's a level to where a mount is rare that it makes it. That is part of the design of it. I hate to say it, but FOMO is part of the design. And if you hate FOMO, okay, fine. I don't, right? That's just part that's part of the design element is you being able to be yeah, this is rare. That's part of what makes it cool. We all have those things. Everybody has something in their home right now that they're part of what makes this thing cool is just it's rare.
Yep.
Yeah. But also it is a cool design. It's a cool design. But how many mounts have been out that are so cool? They're such cool designs, but because they're not rare at all, they're just kind of lame, right? I think every store mount, right? Every store mount is
oh yeah, right,
dude.
Exactly.
They're cool, right? They're cool. The only exception is maybe that store mount cat is kind of a cool one, regardless.
Oh, it is kind of cool, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But outside of that, right? Most cool mounts that you would get, you're just wow, this is awesome, but everybody has one, so it's kind of lame.
Yeah, and even to that point, I feel some of the more rare mounts that are kind of just ugly are just automatically cool because it's so rare. The freaking love rocket, dude, I will die on this hill. That mount is ugly.
Oh, dude, love rocket's so ugly.
Dude, that is the.
Did you see we're getting more rockets though? We're getting more rockets in this patch.
Oh yeah, we are.
Basically the exact same model.
The exact same model.
Yeah,
it's just not horrific pink. It's just red.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's that FOMO, dude. People want it, and it's automatically oh, this is the ugliest mount ever, but it's tied behind a 0.1% chance of getting it, and I have it, so I'm it's the best mount ever, right?
Best mount ever. So, change the topic. We're gonna wrap up here with a listener question, coming from Nustry or Canustry. Hello, just recently found your podcast on Spotify and binged all the episodes, and I love it. Well, thank you so much for doing that. You and Chicken and your guests are so knowledgeable at the game, and I gotta say, I'm a little jealous at that. Listen, I don't know if we're knowledgeable, we just pretend to be. Anyways, continue on. But my question is this. How would it feel for a new and or returning player that hasn't played since Legion to come back to the game and jump into the tanking scene? I mained Blood DK since Wrath of the Lich King, but recently switched to Frost Mage in Shadowlands for a chance of pace and want to get back into the tanking scene. What would you recommend for that type of player? Well, first off, listen, I wish I could go back in time and help you. I love Blood DK. Blood DK is my life. Blood DK is my favorite thing to play. Dude, but Frost was the best tanking spec back in Wrath. But anyways, I digress, dude. Frost was a pretty dang good tank spec. So anyways, you said that you swap back to Frost Mage in Shadowlands. My advice is honestly play however interests you. When I came back to WoW, I wanted to tank. Tanking was what I wanted to do, but I was a little too nervous to tank. And I literally leveled up my DK as a Blood DK. DK. I was so excited. That was my first character. I was I'm so ready to do this. And then I started going into dungeons. I did like heroic, and I just got too scared to do mythic. I literally was like, I don't want to fail this. I think I did some M0. I think I did some M0 because there was no timer. But the timer stuff terrified me because I was like, I don't know routes. I don't know how to do this. And so I personally ended up going and playing healer instead on Resto Shaman. And that's when I started doing low M+. That's when I started doing some raid content. And then one night they were like, hey, we need a tank. And I was like, I have a tank. I've just been too scared to use it. And I kind of raided with it. And then eventually, as I got more comfortable in dungeons, then I was like, you know what? Let me try this tanking thing in the dungeons. But that's me. That's how I did it. I learned the dungeons first and then tried to learn how to tank them. But my advice to you would be don't be as scared as I was. It's not the worst. Maybe surround yourself with people who are going to be a little patient. That's probably the easiest way to do it. Guildmates, like, never be afraid to ask your guild. Be like, yo guys, I want to learn how to tank. Anybody want to run with me in this dungeon? Don't be afraid to do M0. M0 is what I would suggest to start with. That gives you time to just learn how pools feel, where things are, but you're not rushing. You're not rushing against a timer. And I hate to say it again, though, tanks usually lead the progression of the group. Take a second and look up one of the best tools you can do. This gave me confidence, by the way. One of the tools that gave me the most confidence, I don't really use them as much anymore, but one of the tools that gave me the most confidence as a tank when I was starting were just like pulling up tank routes. I would literally just go to Google and I would just be like, Theater of Pain. I'm actually typing it right now. Tank route, right?
Oh my goodness!
And it pulls up that website for you. What's the is it Tank Notes?
Guru?
Or Keystone Guru. Keystone Guru. That's
Keystone Guru. That's
right?
What it was. I said
and then
routes
and then you go to Keystone Guru, and it's like, and it lists out different ones. It's like, this one for this affix, and use this one if you prefer playing this way, or if you want to do this skip, and then you just pick the one that you want.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're also labeled like, this is best for 2 through 8 keys, and then this is best for 12s through 48s, right?
Yeah.
And so that just helps a lot, because then you get to see the percentages, like, this will do this percent. By the time you're done the dungeon, this is the percentage that you should have. So I find like Keystone Guru, it's keystone.guru is the website name. And they have great routes. They have just great routes that you can pick from. I know there's add-ons as well that you can use for routing. I found myself using Keystone Guru just because I use 2 monitors. Well, 3 monitors, actually. And so it's easy for me to just have that on a monitor. But if you want to use an add-on instead, you can do that.
Hey, I agree with everything you said. And to be honest, this might be a super hot take right now. Like super hot. Like boiling water hot take. But I think now is probably the best time to do this. Like, I mean, you don't have a problem, you can run your own key. If you run +2s the entire time, I don't think you're gonna have problems getting people joining you at the beginning of the season. Like, as a tank, there's no way you're not gonna get like 10 DPS queuing for your key in like 3 seconds.
And also, by the way, people are way more patient at the start of a season when no one knows the dungeons. Way more patient.
Yeah. So really, this is the best time to start to learn how to tanking. Granted, I will say it might not, you're probably going to get frustrated. Obviously, that's the biggest problem with season 1 is tanks got frustrated and they stopped playing the game, right? So, there might be some of that moving into season 2, but, stick with it. If you're really enjoying it, you're just getting frustrated, just try to stick with it, be patient, right? But if you're feeling it and you're just not liking it, then nothing wrong with playing Frost Mage, man. That's a good spec.
Last bit of advice I would give is tank is the easy role. With that said,
oh my gosh.
With that said, though, it doesn't mean that you can relax, right? It's hard because with DPS, you're directly comparing. You're directly comparing. You're watching damage meters. You're like, oh, dude, they're all doing 12 times the amount of damage I'm doing. I got to fix my rotation. With tanks, don't slack off, right? Like, make sure you still work on your damage rotations. Make sure you're holding aggro well. Make sure you're pulling as much as you can, right? If you're pulling packs and your health is not moving, pull more, right? Like don't play stupid safe. Like, make sure you're putting the work into your group as well, right? Like, tanking is about a lot more than just being the guy who gets punched. You're oftentimes setting the pace of the dungeon, right? Like you're the pace setter, and so that's important to keep in mind. And then the second thing I was going to say is one thing that I've done for a lot of players. I wish I had somebody to do this for me when I first started, but I've done it for a lot of other players, and it's been super helpful. Is find somebody, like, especially in your guild or whatnot. I did say find like a group in your guild, but if you can only just find one person who can just ping what you should be pulling next, that also goes a long way. Now, right now, that might be hard to find because not everybody is super knowledgeable on the dungeons, which is also why it's a great time to learn how to tank, because now there's like less pressure. But if you're listening to this podcast later, it's like mid-season or something, find somebody. I do it a lot where I'll hop on my healer and I'll run with a tank, and usually on my healer I'm plenty good for low keys, like well above where I need to be for low keys. So I'm just sitting there healing them. They're at no risk whatsoever of dying because they've got me there. And then I'm just pinging every time they kill a mob. I'm like, all right, up over here now, ping here, ping here, ping here, and so they don't even have to really know the route. I'm just teaching them the route as we go along. So if you have a friend or someone in your guild who's willing to do that as well, or even like getting into the dungeon and just being like, yo, can somebody ping what I should be pulling? Especially if it's like a +2, people do that. Just like, hey guys, I'm new to tanking. Would somebody here be willing to just ping the next back? Yeah. I find that players, once you tell them you're learning, they're way more patient. It's just when you go in and you don't say a word, you don't say anything at all, and then you're like the slowest tank in the entire world, and you're like not pulling enough percent, and like you'll kill a pack and then wait and look around and try and figure out what you're supposed to do next. That's when people are like, yo, what's going on? That's when people get upset. When people have a lack of information is when they get upset. So just go and be like, yo, I'm newer to tanking. Would somebody here be willing to just ping what I need to be pulling?
Yeah. I mean, even at that point, you're even giving people the out to be like, okay, like I just don't want to have to deal with this.
Yeah,
they can leave, right?
Yeah.
Better than them leaving like halfway through a key and bricking it, right?
Yeah. And by the way, if they kick you out, like if you just get kicked from the group when you say that, okay, who cares? You're a tank. You'll get into another group so fast it doesn't even matter.
Yeah, right.
And
exactly.
Also it just saves you from the headache of having to deal with something. So like it's not a lose. It's not a lose even if you get removed from the group in that moment. Now don't make yourself sound miserable, right? Like market yourself well, right? Like just be like,
right.
Hey guys, I'm a little bit newer to tanking. I don't really know the route in here. Can somebody just point the way to go and we'll be fine.
Yeah.
Right. Just be confident. And if things go to crap, if things start falling apart, dude, just make fun of everybody else. If they start yelling, you're like, dude, tank, do you even know how to tank? Just be like, yeah, it'd be a lot easier if you actually killed things, right? I don't know, dude, just insult them back, right? That was like the worst advice.
Oh yeah, don't do that. Yeah, but the one last thing about this, Swag is actually one of the goated tanks, and he actually streams tanking on twitch.com, actually twitch.tv.
Twitch.tv.
And a little shameless plug here. The goal is that we're going to do a live podcast on your Twitch.
Yeah, I believe on
right?
the Friday the 14th. Just got to confirm that, but I believe Friday the 14th we'll be doing a live podcast recording that night. So there'll be more information on Discord. Chick and I are always hanging out on Discord, chatting with people, talking. It's a great place. You can also ask questions. If you want to get your questions on the podcast, you can join our Discord and go ask in the Pod Questions channel. But yeah, there's a great community there of players, especially if you want to learn how to do something in game or just want people to do stuff with. There's a great community there. If I'm being totally honest, the one thing that hasn't quite sparked up in our Discord that I hope to see someday is I want to see, especially as the season's starting, I want to see players start doing content together. I would love to hop on Discord and just see people in VC just running dungeons, teaching each other mechanics. I think that'd be awesome. So that's my hope. But our Discord's growing. It's a fun place. You should definitely pop in and be a part of that. And yeah, the live podcast recording on the 14th next month. And of course, whether it's me or anybody else, I do encourage you, like if you want to grow good at your spec, watch people who are good at it. Watch people who are good at it, and you'll learn off of them. Am I good? I run 10s. I run 10s. So like if you're trying to just get into keys or you're running low keys, I love chatting and answering questions people have. When I'm tanking, I love being able to just like answer those questions. If you're like, dude, I want to run 20s, maybe I'm not your guy. But you know, I think Capo's tank, Capo, who we had last, his tank's pretty good. You can go ask him, I guess.
Oh my gosh.
All right, but that's all the time we have for today's episode. We can't wait to be with you again. Chicken, I think we have like a week and a half till our next podcast recording. I don't know if I can go that long. But next time we see you, the new season's going to be out. We're going to have been doing dungeons all week long. It's going to happen so good. So I can't wait. That's going to be a fun episode. Next week, you're not going to miss that one. But for now, how do we say goodbye? We've never established that.
It's goblin time, baby.